Welcome back to our impeachment special. I'm Ari Melber, and now we turn to the focus that has zeroed in on a man in the middle of the whole impeachment probe. We're talking, of course, about Rudy Giuliani. Witness after witness has revealed that Donald Trump outsourced key aspects of American power on Ukraine to his lawyer, Giuliani, which makes it appear that Donald Trump wanted something more like a fixer dictating foreign policy. It is quite the turn for a longtime public servant who made his own name as a, quote, tough-on-crime prosecutor.
If you violate the law, whether it's insider trading or tax evasion or fraud or bribery, the overwhelming general rule is that you go to prison. This case charges more mafia bosses in one indictment than any ever before.
Let me tell you that I know about the crime that you have to deal with. I understand the fear that you have.
Well, the mayor really isn't a tough mayor on crime. The mayor opposes the death penalty.
He said he knew about crime. Well, now some of his associates have been charged with crimes, indicted by the feds, prosecutors looking at Giuliani as well. That means he's under investigation. Doesn't mean we know yet if he did anything wrong. But why would he even get involved in this? Well, Donald Trump hasn't always been the biggest public fan of Giuliani, although they've long worked together. And Giuliani has been desperate to prove his value. Remember that even after candidate Trump reportedly ridiculed Giuliani on the campaign trail for little things like falling asleep on flights, Giuliani was one of the few people who still went out to publicly defend Donald Trump when very few other people would after the release of that damning Access Hollywood tape. And Trump didn't even accept that as a loyal move. Instead, look at this. Top Trump aides said that Trump told Giuliani, quote, "Rudy, you sucked, you were weak, low energy." Now, instead of moving on from the campaign or public defenses of the president, no. When Donald Trump won, Rudy was all about it. He reportedly rarely complained and would jockey with other aides to sit next to Trump at dinner or on the plane. Another aide saying, Rudy never wanted to be left out. If you were ever between Rudy and the president, look out, you're going to get trampled. Now, why did Giuliani put up with so much? Well, one thing that we do know, again, this is from him, is that he desperately wanted a big international role. He wanted to be Secretary of State. He openly campaigned for that job. Do you remember this? He was fanning media coverage, getting article headlines about being a, quote, favorite. And then when John Bolton's name was floated for the post, this was during the transition, do you remember this? Check out what Giuliani did. He offered a compliment, and then, for the job as Secretary of State, a plug for himself.
John would be a very good choice.
Is there anybody better?
Maybe me, I don't know.
Maybe me, but there was scrutiny of, guess what? Giuliani's business ties, a red flag for the Secretary of State job, and then Giuliani said he was out.
The whole thing was becoming kind of very confusing and very difficult for the president-elect. And my desire to be in the cabinet was great, but it wasn't that great. And he had a lot of terrific candidates. And I thought I could play a better role being on the outside and continuing to be his close friend and advisor.
A better role on the outside and continuing to be an advisor. That was public, obviously. Those words now foreshadowing what was to come. Not unlike another former Trump lawyer who reportedly also wanted a top job in Washington and didn't get one.
I'm going to be the personal attorney to Mr. Trump. I'm not going to be in government, but I'm going to remain technically in the same role for Mr. Trump, for President Trump, as I was when he was president of the Trump Organization.
So can I assume that in that role, not being a government role, that you'd have attorney-client privilege with President Trump?
Yes, of course.
And that wasn't the only privilege they shared. Michael Cohen is no longer Donald Trump's lawyer or, quote, fixer. He's incarcerated, in part for crimes that he did on the outside that he ultimately pled to. The question for Giuliani now is, what does it mean to be helping Donald Trump on the outside? Ken Frydman was actually press secretary for Rudy Giuliani in the 1993 mayoral campaign. For years he was a supporter. You see them together here. But he has, in the current climate, become a substantive critic, writing a much-read New York Times piece. What happened to Rudy Giuliani? The man I worked for in '93 is not the man who now lies for Donald Trump. Thanks for coming in for our special here.
Sure, thanks for having me again.
You're a striking voice because you do believe in some of what Rudy Giuliani has done with his public career.
Absolutely.
But you oppose the role he's played now.
Yes.
Do you think that he has exercised such poor judgment that he may have put the Trump presidency in peril?
Yes, yes, I do. And so do a lot of other people. I think he's as responsible as anyone for threatening the president with possible impeachment.
And when you look at what he's accused of, whether or not it went over the criminal line, we'll see where the investigation goes. But do you think that he is, at his stage in this career, doing something that doesn't make a lot of sense for him? He's had a lot of achievements. He also, from what we understand, has made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And some of what he did with these individuals who now stand indicted is just take money with them for apparently an access play.
Right, he has. Money is a very seductive, object. And a lot of people can't make enough of it, and he apparently is one of them. And he's not being as discriminating, apparently, about his clients as he should be. It shows poor judgment on his part. To take $500,000 from these two gentlemen without apparently doing any legal work is highly questionable.
Do you have a theory as to why he seemed so bent on winning over Donald Trump, something we reported on a little bit before introducing you?
Yeah, well, he wanted to be president, if you remember, at one time. Okay, this is as close as he can get to being president. You referred earlier to his lobbying publicly to be Secretary of State. That's something Rudy would have hated if somebody was lobbying publicly to be in his administration. You don't float yourself. And you don't turn down a job you weren't offered. If you recall, he turned down the Attorney General job without having been offered.
Right.
And I can imagine Rudy saying, that guy is never going to be my Secretary of State, which is what Trump did. And
does that mean you think he's also lost his fastball?
He's lost something off the fastball, that's for sure. I mean, it's not 93 anymore.